Why, hello there. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, my name is Mr. DB333, and welcome back to Hearts of Iron 4, The New Order, The Ruin, as the Reich Commissariat, Ukraine. Now, last time we were here together, well, we're cracking down on some termites. We're reinforcing some strongholds in the German side of things. And we're just trying to, get our shit together. Or perhaps not getting our shit together at all. Probably the latter, honestly. Anyhow. I realized that I never read the National Spirits. And if you know anything about Mr. DB333 Let's Play, it's that I like to try to read everything and do a little deep dive on all the lore. So, I'm extremely disappointed in myself for not having done that here. But that's alright, because they're all still here. So let's take a look at the breadbasket of the Reich, which gives us some shit, you know? Some okay stuff, not great monthly population growth, but roleplay-wise, we don't care about that. Since the Reich's great triumph in the East, Ukraine has been the breadbasket of the Reich and its allies in the Pact. With its cities starved and its industries reduced to rubble following the Second World War and the Hunger Plain, agriculture was all Ukraine had left. Ukraine is still hopelessly dependent on agriculture 20 years later, despite small developments in other sectors. It will remain so, as that is what the Reich wants. The breadbasket will continue on, harvesting, exploiting, and killing forever. Next we have a land of contrasts, which we get the political power, which is nice, but everything else is kind of shit. Reich Commissariat, Ukraine is divided not just between the Germans who rule the land and the Ukrainians who are ruled, but within the halls of power as well. Koch stands for hardline National Socialist policy, for ruthless colonization and exploitation, for unending violence, but there are many within the Reich Commissariat who see things differently. Liebrandt's gang of Rosenberg academics and collaborators, Ohlendorf and his allies in the SS, Radigam's small but growing liberal clique, all propose a different vision for National Socialism for Ukraine. Koch is surrounded by men who oppose him, but the question remains, will they ever amount to anything? Next up, we have Paradise Undone, which gives us a lot of just shit. And we can't train, disband, or edit units at all. Ukraine was promised to be a paradise for the Aryan people, a lush land where one would not need to lift a finger to reap great wealth, and where the future of Germany could be built in the sun by her sons. A humble Aryan man with a peaceful farm for his family, free from all the degeneracy of urban life. Life as it was meant to be. The dream died a slow, painful death. Millions were slaughtered, cities were left to rot, German settlements continued to be in danger. Endless partisan warfare has rendered Ukraine a hellscape. Poverty, pain, and misery all around. Ukraine is dying. Or already dead. You also had this little temporary one-time development tax. Difficulties in the Reich have forced the administration to look for funds elsewhere, to look internally. Special tax levied on Ukrainians for development programs will ensure that needed work is financed. It is certain that will not be imposed again. An absolute certainty. And we'll wait and see, I guess. Breadbasket actions. What can we do? Oh, we can't really do much of anything, actually. Laying out our hopes down to some sort of collapse is the exact line of thought which lost us Filkov and Petrovic, and countless other young men. The Reich is as strong as ever. The units are replenished regularly, and you can't even harass supply lines anymore. Mitskim Kornichuk thought the meeting was going swimmingly, and it hadn't already ended, which most in the room seemed to want. We have nothing then. We can't feed our troops, defections are rising, and the people here don't even speak Ukrainian. There's no national feeling at all, it seems, much less class consciousness. Raiding is the only thing that excites the men. Probably because all of your men are common murderers and bandits wearing old uniforms. That's enough! Kornichuk stood above the other commanders, who all immediately yielded. We all know our failures. We stare them in the face daily. How many times do I wish Filkov had lived, and I had not ordered him to raid Kharkiv? Those photos of Petrovic dangling from a tree still haunt me. We've all made mistakes. That is the only thing I know surely. Our failure hangs over every village we've plundered for a few chickens while the whole nation starved. It hangs over every city ringed by ruins. It hangs over the graves of men we ordered to their deaths. It hangs over me, heavier and heavier with each passing moment. The whole room was silent now. Not a man averted their gaze from Koinichuk's steely visage. Not a man disagreed. We have what we have. I've talked to the peasants, who view themselves not as Ukrainian or even Russians, but simply as residents of farms. I've conversed with factory workers who don't even remember Soviet times, and believe every word of Hitlerite propaganda. I shall not lie. The situation is bleaker than you know. However, we still fight, and we will continue to fight, for Ukraine will never live unless we do. Koinichuk sunk into his chair. The room returned to a slight din as each commander rattled off possible strategies. The meeting ended with each man leaving one by one. The cause bloodied, but just as necessary. Oh, starting to contain some, partisan influence. Would we want to crack down on these guys? I don't know if we actually do for what we're planning on doing. So I'll leave that alone. How's our economy coming along? Stupid. I like the economy. It's coming along. We still have a bit of a surplus. Surplus can save our economy from expanding debts, but harms our economic growth. Well, I want to see if we can pay down the debt, theoretically, if at all. Late at night, the Vols of the Ukrainian nation, one Dmytro Klyachesnev, by name, sat alone in a desk stolen from the office of a German official. Years of plans and reports lay in front of him, the past, present, and future of all, reduced to handwriting and the odd printed manuscript. Klyachkivsky's mind wandered. The Ajdaya, that was the OUN, had come far since those early days of being backstabbed by the Polish scum, and then taking the golden opportunity provided by the German invasion to avenge themselves furthermore, as was the right. But for 17 years or so now, the father of Klyachkivsky's movement, Stepan Bandera, had not been there to watch their progress. For the German bastards had taken him to a concentration camp, never to return. The Vols wondered, what would Bandera feel now about the OUN? No, the UPA had done since his departure. Would it give him pride, hope for the future? Or would there be merely a sense of disappointment, or worse yet, anger and rage? Dmytro Klyachkivsky would never think of admitting it to anyone, but such thoughts disturbed him beyond belief. Sometimes they even made him wrathful. There is much yet to do nonetheless. Much more blood left to spill. Well, it's coming along. Nonetheless, we got the committee in our grasps. Our collaborators could do with some support, but we will not let them entertain any independent ideas. Only a fool would ever think that it's possible to displace the Ukrainians entirely from some sort of governance over the land. There are so many of them after all. The UNC will always exist and should be empowered, but it will not and cannot operate independently. The security police and SD will be tasked with maintaining oversight and overwatch, cultivating informants, and otherwise ensuring that we are well aware of the committee's actions and intentions, which we will provide to them regardless. Well, there we go. I need help. I'll just click that to get out of the way. Sitting alone in a darkened room, lit only by a candle he'd found someplace, Yaroslav Semenovic Stetsko pondered alone. Or as Stetsko knew, Klyachkivsky might take the opportunity conferred by such a setting to succumb to intrusive thoughts about what Bandera's corpse thought of him. Stetsko had better things to worry about. writing out strange diagrams and the ideological screeds for which the UPA know him best, Stetsko wondered about how best to test loyalties of his seeming allies, Piasecki and Maivsky. Would it be prudent for him to take them aside someplace, or to meet with them in his own home? Would it be more opportune to rather secure others' loyalty, the loyalty of Piasecki and Maivsky's confidants, than look into winning them over? For that matter, Stetsko wondered, then how would he deal with the rest of UPA, and if and when a breakdown or conflict took place? Shaking his vigorously, he focused on the specific things he was planning. The pen shook in Stetsko's hand as he scribbled out his latest plans. There was something big in the man's mind, and he was very clearly eager to see it brought to completion. If someone would appear into the room, only one thing was clear. Yaroslav Stetsko was plotting something big. Do I want to read another event? Or another city? I might wait until next video to do so, honestly. Other men wasted time sitting around in the rooms, dreaming of plans or of the opinions of men long dead. But Roman's Taras Yaspikovic Shukievich had better things to do. He had to attend to his men, first and foremost, to see that they were in fighting condition or at least recovering well. Alas, that was not to be the case on this visit to the medical shelter. Wounded soldiers groaned around Shukievich, and only a few looked likely to recover. A doctor himself, repressing tears or rage, just told him that a majority of them, if not all but the strongest, were certain to succumb to the infection, unless resources that definitely cannot arrive in time were present. How disgusted him. What was the point of anything if soldiers like that were to fulfill the goals of the EPA were falling down like so many flies? How it enraged him. So long as incompetence and ideological hair-splitting remained a priority, what chance would soldiers of the insurgent army have but to fall back down dead? The thought oscillated back and forth in Shukievich's head. By their repetition, they forced him to begin to resolve that something had to change, and that he was the only person who could ensure that. Well, wait, hold up. Are we now have a deficit, but it's a healthy deficit, I believe. Yeah, this is fine, actually. As Andrei Melnik took to his podium, a blaring horde melody bursted from a pair of loudspeakers behind him once more. It was at Liebrandt's insistence that the Reich's anthem played before each official meeting. As good a reason for backroom dealings as any. Horst Isolide was an ugly, tired march, a note to a man who died 1,000 miles from Kiev. Yet every note was drilled into the chairman's head. It was embarrassment. How had Melnik become so weak, so able to fall in line? Konoval, its OUN, took independence as its first principle, its first demand. It had a spirit that appeared untamable. Under Melnik, he had lost everything, its beliefs, its independence, even its name. Subsumed by the Ukrainian National Committee, the OUN was a mere faction, doomed to eternally rubber stamp whatever whims Liebrandt most felt deserved an audience. Some of his followers still maintained a degree of control. Shuksko's influence in the UNA made him irreplaceable. Tsiborski's plans envisioned a free Ukrainian nation that most had long forgotten. Shutel fought for the Ukrainian people in ways that the rest of Melnik's followers were too cowardly to attempt. None escaped their station. At the end of the day, they still listened to the same anthem. And then, one by one, they threw their hands in salute. To the Reich, to the Führer, to every soldier who tried to slay the Ukrainian people. An ocean of hands, rising above a doomed nation. And Melnik had no choice but to join them. Well, this is not enough. Every bandit killed, every Bolshevik rat's nest unturned, every UPA fanatic extinguished, every sentimentalist bureaucrat assigned to nowhere. All of it will be for nothing. Koch has seen the truth for what it is. Simply too much of the administration is staffed with the weak. Liebrandt's weak-willed Rosenbergites clinging to the old fool's dream from 20 years ago. Ohlendorf's sneering SS men, Brautigam treasonous suits, all of them fail to realize Vaslav, Ukrainian, Russian, or otherwise, understands only violence. And yet they cannot be removed at this time. Koch is soon the writing on the walls. He must receive approval and support from the Reich itself to restore true National Socialist governance to Ukraine, or the colony will soon perish. Fortunately, much of the party, not to mention Hitler himself, share such views. All he must do is travel there. Despite himself, Baudon was always frightened of the city. Yes, some far from knew that these places had been built decades ago, even centuries. They were Ukrainian, same with the field and forests he fought for every day. And for all his life, he had been German, outpost of state control in settlements with German names and a German way of life. Intellectually, he knew that this was mere fiction. In the moment, standing between swastikas and police officers, it felt horribly real. Baudon still sometimes had to enter the city, however. Today, on the orders of his commander, he was in the heart of the Reich Commissariat, Kiev, looking to buy supplies for his fellow soldiers. Baudon hoped that the captain's assignment didn't mean anything, given the risk of the mission. He feared that the man may have given up on him. Trust, he replied to himself. Trust. Finally, he found the right house. He gave a knock on the back entrance, and a man appeared, thin and wiry with an odd expression. Baudon ducked inside. For all his fears of a city, the room was small and unimpressive, and so was the deal. Some bandages and medicine for a king's ransom of foodstuffs. A bad deal, but a deal he was authorized to take. As Baudon left, the seller asked him why he bothers with these missions. He didn't know how to respond. Baudon mumbled something about liberty and slipped into the night. Eric Koch seemed to be happy for the first time in a very long while. At first, his secretaries were confused. After all, the situation with the partisans had not improved, and on top of that, Ollendorf, Liebrandt, and Brautigam were still vying for power as always. However, Koch's secretaries would soon realize the cause for his joy. When he sent them a message, he would be leaving for East Prussia in the next few days and would spend a few weeks up there. As he fiercely packed his belongings, a smile remained plastered on his face. Koch had spent the past 20 years stuck in the miserable position of the Reich Commissar of Ukraine, and having to deal with the natives and his fellow Germans alike. All of them seemed ready to pounce upon him and eat him alive like vultures at the slightest showing of any sort of weakness. Now, though, he could go back to his adopted home. Memories of his time as both Gaultier and Oberpresident of East Prussia filled his mind as he continued to back. Back in those days, before Barbarossa, before being appointed to this backwater of Reich, he had been the one in charge of the region and second only to the Führer himself. He had purged his domain of poverty and unemployment, and East Prussia had become a beacon of prosperity for the entire Reich. As he finished packing, he looked down towards his desk and thought of something. Perhaps his vacation could be something of an opportunity. Perhaps the Reich Commissar could pull some strings to not only be able to resign from his position, but to get his old titles back in East Prussia. Eric's smile grew even wider as he prayed to God that what he plotted would come to pass. After all, if God was on his side, what could possibly go wrong? That seems to be baiting for a cliffhanger. And so I'm going to let that cliff hang.